Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in to the only sports movie tier list that you will ever have to watch in your entire life. And after hearing that statement, you may actually ask yourself, well, what if new sports movies come out? They don't matter. This is the only tier list that matters. And this is the end-all, be-all to all sports movie tier lists that have ever and will ever be made. Because this is the right one. Now, what credentials do I have to give me that ego? None whatsoever. Why do I think that this is the only tier list that's right? Because it is. And just some ground rules for this tier list. These are only for movies that I have seen. Because if I haven't seen the movies, then how could I put them in a tier list? Also, there are some movies that have 19 parts to them, looking at you, Rocky, and I'm not going to go over every single one of them. I'm just kind of like group them up by some of the best work, or if they're all good, then we'll group them all together like that. So, with the ground rules laid, let's jump into it. We're going to start with what I just talked about, which is Rocky. Now, some will say that Rocky is, in fact, the best boxing movie that's ever been made. And if you're one of those people sitting at home right now thinking, yeah, Rocky is the best boxing movie that has ever been made, I'm here to tell you right now that you are, in fact, wrong. And this isn't me, like, knocking Rocky at all. I mean, Rocky is extremely good. Its first movie's good, second movie's good, third movie's okay. Four, we're getting a little crazy. Five, we can just delete that one. It has some outstanding scenes. It has some outstanding montages. I mean, some of the best montages in sports movies. And it also launched the career of one of my favorite action stars ever, Sylvester Stallone. So I got to give it some praise. And for that, our first movie here in the tier list is an A tier. First one. There it is. Nice little A tier. And now that we got Rocky out of the way, let's go into something that probably nobody is expecting. Let's talk about a little movie called The Secretariat. So this is a movie that I actually went and watched in theaters with an ex-girlfriend. She was a big horse person. She really loved horses. And she wanted to go see a movie about a horse. Although it's more about the people around the horse and not the horse itself. But the horse is still a big part of the movie. And since that night, when I went and watched it, I have never watched it ever again. Honestly, that ex-girlfriend was kind of a piece of shit. So for that, I think The Secretariat, we should take this movie and burn it with fire. So we got an A tier, we got a burn it with fire tier. Let's move on to the next movie that we have, which is The Sandlot. And oh boy, here we go. I remember as a kid watching this movie all the time. Some would say almost a disgusting amount of times. And you know how sometimes when you have those movies that you watch as a kid and you come back to them later in life and you're just like, why? Why did I watch this movie? Well, The Sandlot, not one of those movies. I watched this movie a few months ago and this movie still slaps. It is not the nostalgia bait that I think it was going to be. This movie's still really good. And because of that, to have a movie that stands the test of time from childhood to present day, this is another A-tier movie. Another movie that I really enjoyed when I was younger is the one and only Coach Carter. Not really a ton to be said about this movie. I mean, it's an uplifting movie. It has an ending that maybe some people weren't expecting. I mean, I know I wasn't. And honestly, I mean, Samuel L. Jackson's in it. Because he's in it, that makes it a banger. B tier for banger. Now, next we have our first golf movie. And when we look at this movie, I mean, what is there not to like? It has Kevin Costner in his peak, in his zone, in the world of sports. Somewhere Kevin Costner definitely likes to be. Tin Cup is definitely one of my favorite golf movies, I would say. It's not my favorite, but it's definitely up there. The absolute meltdown that he has within this movie is something that probably a lot of people out on the golf course have experienced themselves. Very relatable. And it is an iconic scene, and a scene that I have used quite a bit in my videos in the past. Past the actual comedy and the golf, though, the movie is entirely predictable. The romance that's in it is pretty bland. But overall, it's a solid flick, another B tier. Now, is Dodgeball a sport? Yes. Is Dodgeball a true underdog story, a sports movie? Also, yes. This movie may actually be the most quoted movie that I had growing up. And the movie still slaps to this day. I mean, besides some of the probably jokes that, wouldn't quite fly in today's day and age, it's still really good. Quotes like, if you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball. Or, nobody makes me bleed my own blood. Or how about a GIF that is used a lot that I see, or a video clip that's used a lot within videos, which is that's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him. Past all the quotes, though, the movie's funny, it has a good story, decent writing, pretty good acting, and overall, it's a good film. I like it. Another B tier. Which leads me to a movie that, I don't know, it might be a little bit of a hot take, I guess, but the more I grow older, the more I realize that a lot of people really just don't like Mark Wahlberg. Now, when Invincible came out, he was kind of on top of the movie world, I guess you could say. And he may still be today. But I feel more and more people are starting to get off the Mark Wahlberg train. And in its heyday, I mean, Invincible was, I don't know, it was okay. It was a good story to draw from, some decent acting. Still all right to maybe watch once, maybe twice if you're feeling crazy. But I wouldn't even put this in like a top 50. So because of that, it's C tier. It's all right. But from all right rises a true contender for a potential S tier. It's time for the good stuff. It is time for Remember the Titans. Set in 1971 during the integration of a school in Alexandria, Denzel Washington comes in to teach the team and city, really, about life, acceptance, love, and, of course, football. The whole time during this movie, and I mean at all times, there is tension. There's the tension of the city. There's the tension of the coaching staff. There's the tension of the students. There's the tension of the football team, and then the football team versus the city and the students. And there's just tension always. And all of this leads to a beautiful, albeit probably a little bit of a predictable, third act, but is a third act that really brings home the entire movie. This is a movie that I watched when it came out. I watched when it came out on DVD. And I also bought it so that I could watch it for streaming. I still watch this movie periodically today. And because of that, because I enjoy it so much, I think that it needs to go into the S tier. There's the first one. Looks good up there. But all right, first S tier movies on the board. Where do we go from here? I don't know. On one hand, you have Shake. On the other hand, you have Bake. When you take Shake and you take Bake and you put it together, what do you get? Well, I mean, you get something that breads chicken to fry, but you also get Talladega Nights. It's about racing. It's funny. Great flick. Will Ferrell cracks me up, B tier. But all right, think in your mind, right now, what is the most iconic dance scene in a sports movie? Think really hard. You got it? Let's say it all together. Caddyshack. Caddyshack is the firm definition of a gag film, which struck absolute gold with my brain because of the great. Is great the word that I'm looking for? Great writing. And also the wonderful performances by everyone involved. Chevy Chase. I mean, I'm kind of a big actor. Rodney Dangerfield. Yeah, another pretty big actor. Bill Murray. Yeah, that's a pretty big actor. Overall, I mean, the whole thing is just mwah. It's beautiful. Now, the humor is absolutely 1980s humor, but it's 1980s humor in all the right places. And coming back to the first thing that we talked about, the gopher dancing at the end, that'll live rent-free in my head until the day I am no longer here. Easy A tier. But everybody knew that Caddyshack was going to be in here, right? So let's maybe do something that you're not expecting. And I'll give you a hint. It's about the snow. It's about the ice. And no, Sanka ain't dead, man. It's cool runnings. Feel the rhythm in this underdog story about 4 Jamaican runners, well, 3 Jamaican runners and Sanka, who become bobsledders. Growing up, again, this was another movie that I watched a ton. And again, it's one of those movies like, is it nostalgia or is the movie actually good? Well, yeah, this movie's still good to this day. Now, it may be that way because John Candy is like one of my favorite comedy stars ever. And then also learning later in life that this movie is actually based, very loosely, but still based on real events is also a pretty cool thing. It's funny. It's uplifting. It's still good after 30 years. A tier. All right. I got to psych myself up for this one. Oh, prepare for this. Okay. All right. We have next up Rudy. Now, Rudy, I watched once when I was younger, and I probably will never watch it again. But, who knows? Maybe I will. For now, I'm going to put Rudy in the who the fuck knows, watch it if you want to category. Next up, we have The Longest Yard, and I'm going to lump both the original and the remake into one. I like both. Now, I like the original better, because in most cases, the original movies are just better. But the remake did an actual pretty good job at remaking some of the scenes from the original, and for that I do give them props for it. Overall, though, The Longest Yard is just a great football flick. It mixes the game with prison, and then it puts comedy with it as well, kind of mashes it all together into one. And for that, I give The Longest Yard B tier. But now I have another question for you. Where were you? I want you to think about this one too. Where were you when USA beat the Soviet Union in the 1980 Winter Olympics in hockey? For me, I wasn't even born yet. I don't even think I was a sperm yet. But I do remember watching Miracle, a movie released in 2004 starring Kurt Russell as Herb Brooks, the coach of the team of destiny. And it follows the journey of Herb being selected as coach, then selecting his team, goes into, everything, the miracle that happened in 1980. And probably what I would think captures the moment of the 1980 Olympics from the side of the United States. And past the actual movie, the whole thing just fascinates me. The odds that USA could pull off gold at the Olympics were insane. And I think my love for this movie actually became stronger when I watched a couple of documentaries called The Red Army and Of Miracle and Men, which is a 30-30 from ESPN. Both of these documentaries actually give the perspective of the Soviet Union, one of the perspective of the 1980 Olympics, and also one just of like how big and important and how crazy Soviet Union hockey was in the 80s. Well, forever, actually. If you haven't watched those documentaries, and maybe you've seen Miracle, I would say try and find them. They're both very, very good. And if you haven't seen Miracle, what are you doing? Go and watch it. It's phenomenal. It's probably one of my favorite sports movies ever made. It's S tier. We kind of realized that, right? That it was going to be S tier? It's S tier. It's great. Now time for another question for the audience. Think about the funniest sports movie that you have ever watched. Ever. Sports movie. Funniest one. We've gone over a couple already. What's the best one that just came to your mind right now? If it wasn't Major League, then you can't be trusted. I truly think that any movie that can be released in like 1980, especially a comedy, and still hold up to this day, and is even quoted still to this day, even by like a younger generation. I think all of that put together is honestly a win in my book. And for that, I give this A tier. But if we're just doing sports comedies, definitely an S tier. But for now, A tier for the movie itself. Okay, we're moving through these. Next up, I want to give you one that I think is a little bit more obscure. Something that I don't think a lot of people have actually watched. It's a movie called Goon. And the reason why I say is I don't think a lot of people have watched it is like whenever I bring up the movie Goon, people are like, what's that? I've never seen that. That's a movie? What's it about? And it also kind of strikes true when you see that the movie grossed like $4 million in box office. And honestly, that is a shame because this movie is really, really good. And it has some stars in it, too. Sean William Scott, Jay Baruchel, Allison Pill, Liev Schreiber. His character is actually phenomenal, by the way. He's really good. The list just keeps going on and on. There's a big cast in this movie. But since I'm going to guess that the majority of people who are watching this right now haven't seen Goon, I'm going to say pause the video right now. Just pause the video. I want you to go and watch Goon, and then I want you to come back, and I want you to hit play, be like, yep, you're right. This was actually a really good movie down in the comments. And then, we could just carry on. But just go and watch Goon. It's really good. It's A tier, for sure. A tier, 100%. But now that we're past that, it's time to get back a potential nostalgia trap. Now, when I was growing up, besides The Sandlot, a movie that I watched a lot was A League of Their Own. It was a movie that my mother actually loved. Well, probably still loves to this day. And she passed that love down to me so that I could then love it. And I'm glad that she did, because this movie is still absolutely phenomenal. But honestly, with Tom Hanks in it, how could it not be? Tom Hanks makes nothing but great movies. What's a movie with Tom Hanks that just, isn't good? I don't think there is one. And really, I know, looking at this list, I know. There's a lot of movies at the top, but my God, these sports movies are just so good. Because this movie right here is also going A tier. It's such a good movie. Can't help myself. If they're good movies, I gotta put them up there. They're good. And I have to butter you guys up too, because I definitely have some movies in here that are probably some hot takes. And it's time for me to jump into one of those, because I got a movie that a lot of people are actually probably pretty high on, but I think overall it was just and that's The Rookie. And honestly, it's not just one thing that makes me kind of meh on the movie. It's a multitude of things. The whole movie just feels kind of campy. And I also feel like this movie didn't really build up enough what the man actually accomplished. This dude was a first-round pick. He went through a multiple amounts of surgery. It was seven surgeries on his arm. He was coaching high school baseball, and he ended up making a major league roster after going to a local tryout. And in his mid-30s, because all this happens when he's in his mid-30s, the dude is still throwing mid to high 90s for his fastball after all of that. That feat that's astronomical. That is a one in never. It didn't help when I read the actual autobiography by the same name. And honestly, the book is just kind of better in every way. I know you hear a lot of people say that, and the book's always better. That's not always the case. I think in this case, though, the book is definitely better. And I guess if you hate reading, then the movie's fine. But for me, the movie has just always been kind of down the middle, meatball, okay, C tier. Okay, all right, chugging along here, doing really good. We've gone over quite a few movies here. How many more movies do we have? That is a lot. How long have I been talking? Oh boy. But now, it's time to show me the money! Listen, I'm going to say it. I'm going to let everybody know right now, while we're here, I am a sucker for rom-coms. The Big Sick, great. About Time, phenomenal. What If? Yep. And also, Jerry Maguire. Now, Tom Cruise might be a Scientologist freakazoid, but I think everybody needs to admit that the dude's a real good actor. Now, Jerry Maguire might not be his best work, but this movie also has, Cuba Gooding Jr., Renee Zellweger, and that in itself, the whole cast carries this movie to the finish line. Also, this movie brought one of probably my most used alerts ever on my Twitch channel. It's a song made by Mike Diva, and I'll actually put a link down in the description if you want to go check it out, because it's really good. I'd suggest you check out a lot of the guy's music. It's actually pretty cool. He did this song called Show Me the Money. He also did another song called the Kazoo Kid Remix, which I used for the longest time on my Twitch channel as well. Go check him out. I'll put the links down in the description so you can. And honestly, this movie would probably be B tier, but because of that song, like what came from this movie was that song, and I love this song, I'm going to put it in the A-B tier. One of a kind. There are no other movies that are going to be here. This is the only one. And from there, we're moving to a little movie you guys probably know, probably watched before, and it is 42. And honestly, I like this movie. For Jackie Robinson being one of the most important players in, I would say, sports history, the movie itself feels very like Hollywood ham-fisted into existence. A couple of years ago, thanks to a game called OOTP, Out of the Park Baseball, I found myself kind of neck deep in the NLBM, and everything that they have to offer made 42 just fall more flat with me. I want you to watch 42, or if you've already seen 42, I want you to go and watch a man named Bob Kendrick talk about Jackie Robinson. Honestly, if I'm being real, I think that I could listen to Bob Kendrick talk every day for the rest of my life. And hearing him talk about Jackie Robinson made me want to, get the stories and everything from him instead of watching 42. I like this movie. I don't know, just not quite enough. And for that, I put it in the B tier. It's still really good, but B tier. Now go look up everything on the NLBM. Watch everything that you can. All of the stories, all of the players involved. I mean, if you are a sports fan, you are doing yourself a disservice not going and looking up all of this information, this wealth of knowledge about the game of baseball. Everything about the NLBM is S+ tier. It's phenomenal, the best. It's great. Go and look it up. Absolutely love it in history. And now, as we move through the list, we come up to a little movie called Eddie the Eagle. I don't know which I like more about Eddie the Eagle. I don't know if I like the movie more or if I like the actual story more. The movie follows a man called Eddie Edwards, and the more you look into his story, the better it all becomes. It is such an awesome story that the actual Olympic Committee made a rule so that he or nobody else could do what he did again. But I mean, Eddie lives in infamy. Well, I mean, enough infamy that I had no idea who this person was until the movie actually came out. But I mean, I'm sure British people know of him, right? And also, Hugh Jackman's in this. And I mean, who doesn't like to see Hugh Jackman? And he has, I would say, probably his best scene that he has ever had in a movie in this movie. A part of it is playing behind me, probably. And I'm not going to show the whole thing. Go and watch the movie, okay? Go and watch it if you haven't. The scene is great. And because of some of the scenes in this movie, there's like bouts of comedy that actually got some pretty good pops out of me. And for that, the movie is good enough to be a B tier. Now, this next one's going to be quick. Because, I mean, what's there to say about Field of Dreams that hasn't been already said? I feel like everybody's watched this, right? At this point. I'm sure they have. Kevin Costner, good. Baseball, good. Ghosts coming out of a cornfield to play baseball, good. Movie, good. A tier. Now the quick one's out of the way. Time for another hot take. Definitely the first hot take of this video, correct? Because it's right. This tier list is right. But I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it right now. Hoosiers, purely running on nostalgia when you watched it as a kid. The movie is okay. Why am I saying that, you might ask? Because I am. All right, moving on. Now for our next movie, The Foxcatcher, this comes with a movie, a Hollywood film. It comes with a book, and it also comes with a documentary that you can watch or read. The movie itself is actually very, very gripping, and one that the cast brings to life vividly. It actually has Steve Carell in it. What the fuck? That's Steve Carell? Funny Man Office Steve Carell? What the fuck? It has Channing Tatum, who I could look at forever. And it also has Mark Ruffalo. And those three bring this story to life. And just in case you haven't seen or heard of this story about Foxcatcher, I'm not going to say anything else about it. I do not want to spoil this for you because the whole thing is just, it's not expected. The whole story is so crazy with so many turns to it that it's just, you need to go watch this. It's A tier for sure, 100%. Time for some more rhetorical questions. Are you a fan of the Rocky series? Are you not a fan of the Rocky series? If you answered yes to either of those questions, then go and watch Creed. Shit, watch the second one while you're at it. The first one is actually better in my eyes, but the second one does a good job at continuation of story. I haven't seen the third one yet. Sure, it's good. It's out, right? It is out. Okay, came out in March. Good to know. But, I mean, reviews are good on it, so I'm sure it's good. And honestly, this has just been a great reboot, of a retelling just through different eyes of the Rocky. And it stays pretty, close to the actual, theatrics of the sport of boxing that Rocky did, which makes it even more of a treat. It absolutely helps that Michael B. Jordan and also Tessa Thompson are in this because they're pretty good at the acting thing. And I know what I'm about to say probably won't surprise anybody, and I know that when you look at this list, it's like, holy shit, there's a lot of movies at the top, but it's like, I can't help myself. The movies are good. They're just good. I gotta put them up there if they're good. And Creed is good. It's A tier. This is where it goes. It's good. And I promise, more bad movies are coming. I think they are. I think they're coming. So you can say how wrong I am down in the comments. This next movie, though, it's not one of those. Do you know what happens when you mix probably my favorite director ever, and you give him Robert De Niro, and then you give him Joe Pesci as his brother, and you set it in the world of boxing? You get probably one of the best sports movies ever made, called Raging Bull. Now, when I say Joe Pesci as his brother, I mean that in a sense of they have one of the most fucked up relationships ever, and it's spectacular. I would actually say that their relationship in its entirety probably make this movie one of the best movies ever made. I remember watching this movie for the first time later in life. I mean, I say later like I'm older. I mean, I'm in my 30s, which I guess, for the internet is caveman at this point. But, I watched this movie for the first time ever 5 years ago. And then after I watched the movie, because we're in the golden age of the internet, I learned that this man actually existed. And that this man was actually like this. And that he lived to be 95 years old. What the fuck? The writing, great. The directing, great. The story of just this man's life, out of this world. The acting, top notch. This movie's isn't just one of the best sports movies ever made. It may actually be one of the best movies ever made. Easiest S tier of my life. That's where it belongs. This movie is phenomenal. But now that we got Martin Scorsese out of the way, let's get back to what everybody's here for. Kevin Costner in more sports movies. And honestly, I love it because I fucking love Bull Durham. This movie is what it looks like when you take the game of baseball, you dumb it way down. But then it turns around and becomes an accurate representation of the game of baseball, I guess. Bull Durham is absolute comedy gold because it takes that whole dumbing it down in a way, and it inserts some of the dumbest lines I have ever heard in the history of writing. But somehow it just works. I honestly do not understand it, but this movie is comedy gold, and one that I think any sports fan should watch, especially if you haven't. A tier. A tier. Oh my, it's time for a lightning round. This is getting extremely long, so the alarm has told us that it's time for the lightning round. This is where I'm going to rattle off some quick synopses for some movies, and I'm going to put them where they rank. Okay, you ready? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Figure skating, but the main character is a psychopath. Kevin Costner in another sports movie, but this time portraying a real-life Madden player. Kids baseball, but it's actually pretty good. Kids basketball, but only stupid kids like it. Will Smith tries to capture the spirit of Muhammad Ali and does an okay job doing it. Michael Jordan tries to act, and only cartoons can make the movie bearable. All right, we're going to pause the timer real quick. Okay. I just want to say, just a little side note here. I watched this movie so much as a kid, and I watched this movie again last year, and watching it last year made me want to go back in time and smack the living I wasted so much of my life watching this movie. I'm so angry. This movie is garbage. And now back to the lightning round. Probably not a sports movie, but I mean, honestly, at this point, who gives a shit? Talking cars go vroom. Football, but it's played by misfits, and it's actually kind of funny. And it also has Keanu, and I love you, Keanu. Football, but how shitty the NFL has been about concussions. And finally, football, but what the hell? This is actually really sad. I actually cried during this movie. Fuck you. There it is. That's probably the fastest lightning round ever. Who would have thought that the first ever lightning round in a sports movie tier list video would be the fastest ever? That's a world record. Gonna have to get summoning salt on this. But now we're back to the long, drawn out, my voice is becoming static at this point because you just want to see what the final tier list looks like so that you can tell me how stupid I am, or that I missed this movie, or I missed that movie, or whatever you're going to write in the comments. Happy Gilmore is about a failed hockey player who turns to golf and is led by an ex-pro who got his hand bitten off by an alligator, and Happy also gets the shit kicked out of him by Bob Barker. And there's this guy named Shooter McGavin, and I mean, he's just been kind of popping up a lot lately. PGA 2K has used him for like the past 4 years in their marketing, and I don't know, the movie's funny, movie's good, I like it, think you should watch it, B tier. And staying on the theme of Adam Sandler doing sports movies, we now have The Waterboy. And there seems to be a theme here, because alligators biting off people's hand, and now we have another thing about an alligator, and in this movie, I mean, his mama told him that alligators are so angry because they got all them teeth, but they ain't got no toothbrush. And to me, that sounds highly accurate. But we learn that it's actually due to an enlarged medulla oblongata. And really, who would have thought that in an Adam Sandler movie, we would be learning about animal biology? Huh. All right. Just because of that, B tier. All right, we are starting to really get down to this now. Not a lot left at this point in time. And for this next movie, I really thought to myself, what is my favorite golf movie that I have ever seen? There's been a few golf movies on this list. And I mean, I think a couple of those probably could have held the title of best golf movie. And I mean, this one could also be it, but it falls a little short. We're talking about The Legend of Baggar Vance. This movie stars Will Smith as an angel and a little actor you've probably heard of by the name of Matt Damon. Another movie that starts extremely slow. I feel like that's just kind of like sports movies. They just kind of like start really slow and build up to a third act kind of thing. But this movie, you know, builds up into some real life shit. There's some love shit. There's some golf shit. You bring in Charlize Theron to play a love interest, sprinkle in some good writing and some really bad writing. And I like this movie a lot. It's good. I enjoy it. B tier. Now, this might be just your opinion, man, but Big Lebowski is a great film, and bowling is in fact a sport, and whatever you think you are, I am, and watch this, B tier. Next, we have a young teen sports movie that actually holds up really well. The Mighty Ducks is a movie that still slaps. But honestly, if you haven't gone back and watched this movie since you were a kid, like maybe you watched it as a kid, but you haven't since, go back and watch it. It's a great nostalgia blast. Very, very good movie. Very, very good series. A tier. But all right, I'm just going to let you guys know we have 2 movies left, okay? 2 movies left. Now, a couple of movies back, I said, still looking for our favorite golf movie. And for those keeping track, there is one movie that still hasn't been talked about. So now, it is time for my favorite golf movie, and that is The Greatest Game Ever Played. It's based on the 1913 U.S. Open and follows kind of the journey of the winner of that tournament, Francis Ouimet, who not only won the tournament against some of the biggest juggernauts in the game of golf, but he also did it with a 10-year-old caddy. Now, I'm not sure how true to life their relationship is in the movie when compared to real life, but the relationship in the movie between Francis and Eddie, his caddy, is one that is just lighthearted, fun. It's great to watch. It's really fun. It's really engaging, and for golf movies, I mean, that can be extremely difficult. Also, it's been a minute since I've seen this movie, but like some other movies in this list, the ending of this movie absolutely just broke me down into tears. And another thing that's really cool about this movie is the history that it is following is probably the biggest turning point in American golf. It's a phenomenal flick. It definitely separates itself from the rest of the golf movies and the sports movies in general. And for that, it goes in its rightful place. S tier. And we made it. This is it. The final movie. If you made it this far and are asking yourself right now, why the hell am I still watching? Well, then you are probably sleeping and forgot to turn this video off. And to you, I say thank you. You hear me? The subconscious of the sleeping individual with this video still on? I appreciate you. Sweet dreams, king or queen, wherever you are. But now if you're asking yourself, wow, this is a huge list, but out of all these movies, is there a movie that maybe you've watched the most in, like, let's say the last decade? And I know none of you are asking that question, but I'm just kind of asking that question rhetorically because this movie is the movie that I have seen the most over the past 10 years. I absolutely enjoy this movie. It might not even be the best sports movie, but it is definitely the movie that I've gotten the most entertainment out of, and that is Moneyball. I absolutely love the story of Moneyball, and also, man, geez, I just feel bad for Oakland A's fans. But the story of the 2002 Oakland A's is such a good one. It culminated with a 20-game winning streak, but also an early ALDS exit for Oakland, of course. And what does Oakland get now? Well, an owner who wants to move the team. And 30 years of being good, but not great. And really, Oakland fans just deserve more, I feel. But instead, they get just a AAA team for other clubs. And honestly, it's too bad that the owner, who is a billionaire, is just too poor to really field a team that I feel like the Oakland A's deserve. Honestly, this would be a great story to tell. Just the story of the Oakland A's. Maybe a good story indeed. But I will finish it off with maybe my most watched sports movie, at least in my older years, ever. And that is Moneyball. It's a great movie. It is an S tier. And that's the tier list. That's it. Holy cow. Look at that monstrosity. That's a lot of movies. And I'm sorry this took so long. I have found that I actually suck at writing. This is the 14th time that I have rewritten this script, but I promise I'll get better at these. All right, I'll get faster. Everything's getting better. This one's just been a tough one. But for now, I hope that you enjoyed this absolutely correct, no hot takes whatsoever. This is the right tier list for sports movies. It's the best. And I am sure I have missed some movies, but if I did miss a movie, does that movie really matter? Maybe. Either way, see ya.